Hi, my name is Larissa Uceda,
My name is Rosie Castle.
and we are going to look at the student view in Compass Learning. Let's start by logging on to Internet Explorer. Compass is in the RCSD Educational Favorites. If you click here, click on that RCSD Educational Software folder and go down to Compass. We are going to log on as a student.
Now, when you are logging in as a student, the student will use their last 6 digits of their 890 number. That would be like their lunch number. And then for their password, they would use their first initial, last initial, and the year they were born. And so now we are logged in as a student. And so this is be the launch pad for the student, and you can see all the curriculum icons.
Notice that there's a gold ring and it says assignments under language arts and math. And those are the two areas that students have a learning path, the NWEA learning path. You ready to look at one?
Sure.
Okay, so let's click on, this student was assigned 3 learning paths. And click on the foundational skills. As a teacher, you would decide and direct the students to which learning path to start in.
Now, as you can see, there are many different activities within the learning paths. And this was created based on their NWEA scores. Some of the learning paths can have over 50, 60 different activities, as you can see here.
Now we'll look at the different activities that are in the learning paths. The first activity, this is an Odyssey Writer activity. These are important. They will use the Odyssey Writer. It opens up right into Odyssey Writer, but these must be scored by the teacher. The second activity is a learning activity. The third activity is, it says activities quiz. It's a scored learning activity. This right here is a decision point. If the student gets 70% or higher, they move on to the next activity. If they are below 70%, they are sent back to the previous activity, and then they do this scored learning activity one more time before moving on. Down below, we have another scored learning activity with a decision point. Again, in the NWEA learning paths, all the decision points are 70%. This one is a little bit different. If the student scores below 70%, usually it's just 5 questions, they don't go back to the previous activity, they just go back and do this activity again. See how the line is a little bit different than these decision points. Lastly, this is an authentic task. There aren't too many of these, but it is important to show students. When they see one, the student needs to open it up. It's actually something that they need to print, which most students will not be able to print. But to move on, they need to open it up and then quit, and then it will let them continue on their learning path. And when you want to get back to the launch pad or that student home, it's really important for students to click here, not click over here and log out. That will log them out of Compass, and they'll have to log back in. So I'm going to click on the launch pad. All of this is really good to do the student log on with your class. You can have a student log on to your computer and then show it on your smartboard to the full class. Now, if we click on numbers and operations, these are the math. This learning path is short. It has 2 activities, so it really depends on the amount and type of questions in the NWEA test. I'm going to go back and go to one other math, and this one has a bit more. Now, let's dive into one of these learning paths and check out and look at some of the activities. Let's start with this learning activity.
Do you like things that are awesome? What about things that are fun? Well, guess what? It's time for a show.
This is a loading activity that students can just go to the bottom right and click skip. They do not have to spend time on it.
Rita, my teacher keeps talking about this idea of eating a healthy diet and getting exercise. So I'm reading this article about how to eat healthy.
Oh, that's great, JT. What does the author have to say?
That's the weird part. He says that you should eat broccoli with every meal, including breakfast. I don't know if I agree with this.
What do you think? Do you agree with the author? Do you think eating broccoli with every meal is a good idea? Or do you disagree and think that's too much broccoli?
As you can see here in the activity, it has a red button. The red button will replay the question along with the answers.
What do you think? Do you agree with the author? Do you think eating broccoli with every meal is a good idea? Or do you disagree and think that's too much broccoli? Well,
So
if
we're
you
gonna
disagree
choose.
with the author, then you and the author have different points of view. Let's learn more about point of view. I know that you have fun at parties, but darling, as your agent, I'm advising you not to accept
As
the
you
party
see,
clown job.
down here at the bottom
Typecasting
there is a
career
button
killer.
so that the students in the
Ciao,
middle
sweetie.
of their lesson, they can pause the lesson if they need to step away. They do not have to log out and log back in. The rewind and the fast forward button is just there, but it does not do anything during this particular part of the lesson. And then when they come back, they can push play and the lesson continues.
Hello, you two. I'm glad you're interested in nutrition. Making good choices about what you eat is important.
Then we need to ask ourselves, what are my opinions? What are my experiences? That's how we can figure out our own point of view. Sometimes we'll agree with the author and share his point of view, and sometimes we'll disagree and have a different point of view. Broccoli at every meal? Not a chance. To hear all that again, click the yellow button. To forge ahead, click the green button.
This is really important to show the students. So if they get to this point and they click on this green button to move on, this is a point where their work has been saved so far. So if they click the green and then log out, when they come back, it will come to this point. If they do not, and they would just quit here, then they did all this work, they're going to start over. We don't want them to log out even if they come back here to the Launchpad. Next time they come to the activity, they're going to have to start from the beginning. So let's click on this point.
Now let's try some questions. 1. So, when you read an article in a newspaper, magazine, or online, do you always need to agree with the author or share his or her point of view?
Now at this point, these questions, there is different feedback depending on the answer that a student chooses. So it's nice, they get the feedback right away, and in some cases there's some reteaching.
Once you've thought about your own point of view, then you can decide whether you and the author have the same point of view or if your points of view are different. It's okay either way.
This is another one of those points. So if I click here, then the work will be saved up to this point.
The author of this article writes about the kinds of food served in schools. Pay close attention to the opinions the author presents and ask yourself, what do I think? Click on the speech bubbles and underlined words for help. Ready, set, food fight!
Again, this red will read
Should
the area.
schools ban junk food? Learn what people think, then decide for yourself.
This is nice. It has a lot of support. And if there's a blue underlined, it brings up the dictionary.
Do you know anyone with a serious medical problem? Have you ever been sick for a long time? Being sick is not a very fun thing to deal with.
Okay, so that it even gives them some.
Thinking prompts.
Figuring out our own point of view isn't hard. It just takes some time and some thinking.
Sometimes we'll agree with the author and share his or her point of view, and sometimes we'll disagree and have a different point of view. From my point of view, it's time for band practice. I plug everything in, you go warn the neighbors. See you next time.
Okay, so we finished that activity, and we can see that we get the green check mark. And so now we're ready to go on to the next activity, which is the quiz. From this point, let's jump back to the student launchpad. We spoke about the assignments. Now we'll look at the other information in the launchpad that's available for students. The most important is the portfolio, My Portfolio, or the student backpack. When a student clicks on it, it comes up to their recent work for today. This is a great way to see exactly what your students have done during class time. Click on your backpack at any point. They can bring it up and see where they've been. You can see if the status of the activity, if it's filled, it's completed, these two have been started. If you see someone with 10 activities, they were just clicking around. There's also a button for the week and for the month.
And the backpack is a nice way for you to go around and just double check, and at the end of the work period is to have the students pull up their backpack, so that way you can double check, just do a quick check of what they've accomplished, what they haven't accomplished, and that way they can see that you are instantly checking what they've accomplished or at least started. As you can see, the activity that we just finished was the point of view lesson, and under status it is completely colored in solid blue to show that we completed that activity.
If it was a quiz, it would show a scored or a scored activity. It would show a score here. You could actually click on that score. It's a link, and it would show you the quiz. The next tab is the assignments, and this is a good way to show the student, let's see where your assignments are at. You can tell that this one has been started, and if you click on the details, you'll see the actual activities within the learning path. And lastly is the reports tab. Students or parents are able to pull the same reports that the teacher can pull. So they would choose either language arts or math under the drop down, and then the activity type I would suggest all, and for a week or a month or the date range it will pull up a PDF. I'm going to close out of the backpack. And one other area, the activity finder. If there is an activity you want a student to redo or something for another class, you can give them the activity number and they will go right to that activity.